Hi everyone, I am Sarah Fieschi, Nutritional Therapy Association of Australia and New Zealand instructor and founder of Food Spirit Wellness. Today on the NTA Australia New Zealand vodcast, we're diving deep into the hidden world of environmental health with someone who's been on the front lines for over 2 decades. Meet Deanne, a powerhouse building biologist, indoor environmental professional, and certified mould expert who's on a mission to help families create healthier, safer homes. She's also a geobiologist, a certified GAPS practitioner, a Psych K facilitator, speaker, author, and all around wellness activist. From mold to EMFs to the gut brain connection, Deanne brings a truly holistic lens to healing our environments and ourselves. You're going to walk away from this conversation seeing your home and health in a whole new light, I am sure. So, to start us off, Deanne, can you share a little bit about your background and what led you into the world of building biology, environmental health, and eventually quantum biology?
Sure. So, I'm an incredibly curious individual. So, and a compulsive researcher. I was one of those kids that absolutely loved school, not for any purposes of homework, but I just love information. So, um, I get excited about learning new things, and I've always been sort of quite environmentally sensitive. So, as a kid, my sister would if we were having an argument, she'd spray hairspray in my bedroom, and I would have like a meltdown over it, and I'd be like, "What are you doing?" Because it would really affect me, and I was very aware of those sensitivities at a very young age. And then I um, got a mold illness in my late teens, and I had quite a bit going on in my life then. Back in the 90s, that wasn't really a thing. It was like, let's just keep checking for glandular fever. I think that was like the only test available back then. Um, and so I spent a lot of time sort of trying to understand my own health journey from quite a young age, and then really delved into sort of food and nutrition and things like that. And ended up in, long story short, a lot of different disciplines, but ended up running a health food store in the UK. And I would have these clients come in all the time, and they, to me, had, it was quite a well-off area in London, and they sort of had an idyllic lifestyle to me. They didn't have any financial stress. They would sort of yoga and catch up with their friends for an organic juice, and everything sort of seemed, you know, just a nice lifestyle to be living. But they had all these issues, and it was becoming really clear to me that there was a lot going on in the environment, because I would hear my clients, and I had a team of fantastic naturopaths that I worked with as well. So we were selling a lot of supplements and different protocols and things like that, as well as health foods. And these people would say, like, I've just moved into this basement apartment, and, I'm constantly sick now, or I've moved in with my boyfriend and I get headaches every time I go there, or we used to live somewhere else abroad, and every time we come back here, we get really sick. And so I was sort of seeing, like, okay, they've ticked all these other foundational sort of aspects when it comes to health, but there's something going on environmentally. And being so sensitive, it made very much sense to me. And so that sort of started me down this path in my very early 20s of studying the environment. So looking at everything from what goes on underneath the earth. So what we would traditionally call like shorelines, or the Indigenous would call sick country, or the geopathic stress, or everything from songlines to everything kind of subtle energy. And that was like incredibly fascinating. And then I started to research more into the physical side of it, and did my studies as a building biologist, so looking at mold and EMF and water contaminants and chemicals, and allergens and things that were in the built environment that were impacting the health. And I sort of felt like that was sort of more impacting than the subtle energies at that point. But it still wasn't the be all and end all. And then it kind of led me to, well, why are these people, why are they being impacted more than other people? So where are we losing this robustness in the body? So a lot of studies into nutrition and gut and, what is going on in the microbiome and the interplay between us and dirt, for example, and what we need. And so it was almost a natural progression to then go into studying quantum biology, and which has kind of really peeled it all back for me as well. And I think it's changed me as a practitioner in how I look at things. And I look over the years of how I've changed as a practitioner from being, it's this and that's terrible for you. And, all these things are going to impact and you need to remove them all and, take life very seriously, to now a much gentler approach and really looking at how we're supposed to live and sort of relaxing a little bit in some areas and then really sort of upping sort of our lifestyle behaviors in other areas. So yeah, it's been a long journey of study and every part of it has taught me so much. But probably the last decade of going into people's homes, and so as a building biologist and working closely with practitioners, they would refer clients for me to go in and assess what was going on in the environment to help create a picture of what was going on in terms of their chronic health and possible exposures or triggers for that. So for the last 10 years, I've spent going into people's homes and looking at how they live. And that is like, that's gold in terms of understanding sort of what's going on with people today.
What a journey from your own personal experiences as a young child, the sensitive nature that you were and that you were experiencing, and then your experience with, mold illness and just witnessing and listening to your journey. Again, it doesn't happen to us, it happens for us, because look at what you're doing now and that journey that it's taking, in terms of focusing on, like you said, the subtle energies and then the built environment, and then focusing on elements like diet and lifestyle and the gut. And what's so interesting to hear about, I guess, your experience as a health food shop owner, and then, looking at what was playing out and questioning, well, what's actually going on here, with, this community that's frequenting my health food shop, that are doing XYZ that seems on the surface all good and right and helpful. No, there's more. And so you delved even deeper, asking those questions. So, yeah, I think it's just a beautiful journey to tune into, about, how elements can play into our lives that might seem like, especially as a young child, being, unwell or quite sensitive, that, oh, that's not a good thing. But yes and no, look at what you're doing now, look at what you're pioneering now. So thank you for sharing your journey, up until now. It's very fascinating. You touched on quantum biology. For those new to the term, what exactly is quantum biology?
So quantum biology is the intersection between quantum physics and biology. So it sort of puts a whole new layer onto how we look at the body. So we're looking at things like the interplay between the human body or any biology and light, in particular the light spectrum, as well as magnetism and sort of how the body works more so as a battery than anything else. And then water. Water is a huge part of the study, in terms of quantum biology. And for those that may sort of know some of the people involved, you'd be looking at people like the works of Dr. Jack Kruse in terms of light, Gerald Pollack in terms of water and how water works within the body. And it's just it's an incredibly fascinating area of study, and I think it's almost been like the missing piece, because although it's quite, the science side of it can be very intense, and the purpose of this interview, I think, is not to go too deep into the science, because the flip side of it is that it just makes everything else make sense. And so even, like when I was at uni doing like chemistry, I'd be like, you're learning about things like benzene rings and that. And then, almost 30 years later, I'm studying and I'm going, what? Light comes in and it gets collected in the benzene ring and it changes that into the next like neurotransmitter. I'm like, that's the missing piece, so it's a very emerging area of study. It can be, the principles on it can be applied to quite a large range, but in essence, it's really paring back to our biological needs in terms of how we evolved, and then throwing a different understanding on the mechanisms of how the body works. So more from an electrical sense, as opposed to, like chemical reactions and things like that within the body.
I love how you spoke about looking at the body, the being like a battery, and focusing on the biological needs from an electrical perspective with regards to quantum biology, um, and how light is, and you found that light is that missing piece. And yeah, when you were talking about your days of uni studies and chemistry, I remember that too. And there was no discussion about light, and there was a lot of stuff that was, the connections certainly from my end, maybe similar to yours, just weren't being made. So how fascinating that now you're moving on through your journey and delving deeper, and these connections, something as simple as light, really, yet so potent, is supporting those connections now with so much more in so many different ways. So you often speak about the importance of nature, sunlight, light, and grounding. Why are these natural elements so fundamental to our health and well-being?
Yeah, that's a cool question. So the more I understand the human body, the more I understand that it is the basic needs that we are missing out on. And if we look at the body from an evolutionary perspective as to what we evolved with, the main two environmental inputs were sunlight and the Schumann resonance. So for those that don't understand or know what the Schumann resonance is, that's, the earth is a little molten ball, it spins around, and as it does so, it lets out an electromagnetic field. And that field tends to sync with our brain waves, and does, there is a zillion studies on what the Schumann resonance does in terms of repairing DNA and all sorts of magical things. But we were designed to live within certain frequencies, and we were designed to have a very strong interplay with the sun and light in general. So not just the sun, but also the absence of certain lights. And so, and then when we take that a little bit further and we start to look at the body as more of an energetic being and more an electrical being, and understand it on a subparticle sort of basis, and looking at the body's needs to uptake electrons, we start to realize that we are like this little battery, and we deplete ourselves and we need to charge ourselves. And on a very basic level, we have all of that for free. We're just not using it. So, we go outside and, people have been saying this for years, and I am very guilty of this because, I love to go right down the rabbit hole. And I've known about grounding since forever, and, the benefits of it. And people would go, and, I know maybe 10, 15 years ago, someone would go, oh, go by the seaside because you breathe in all those negative ions. And I'd be like, oh, God, take some vitamin C, or, like I sort of downplayed the importance of those things. I'm very guilty of that. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, it's on our doorstep. And it really does. The science now, the emerging science, really backs up how important that is. And so we have all these things that we were designed to do, that the human body was designed to do. Our feet, our hands, our body was designed to uptake electrons from the ground to recharge the body, because the stress on the body that we have, and there are a lot of things on the body that remove electrons, which stops us from being able to produce the amount of energy that we need and our robustness. So it's getting back to these very basic principles of what the body needed. So in particular, sunlight, and sunlight on the eyes and the skin. It needed to be barefoot on the ground to uptake and sort of recharge the battery. And both of those elements then interplay with the water that's in the body, which is sort of fundamental to the understanding of quantum biology, in that there is this fourth phase of water. So we have, like a gas, solid like our ice, and then we've got our liquid water. Is that we have this fourth phase, which is like a gel within the body, and the health of that, and how that interacts, and the messages that are sent through that, and how it protects and cleans and expands, and all the beautiful things that it does in the body, in a cell, outside of the cell. When we start to sort of unpack that and look at that and go, wow, that's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And then we go, well, what influences it? It's like, well, being outside barefoot, being in the sun, getting UV on the body, getting near infrared on the body. There's all these things that influence it, and nothing influences it more so than nature. And then you go, well, that makes sense, because we, however long you believe that we've been on this planet for, the sun has always been here. The Schumann resonance has always been here. Even if you look at sort of our earliest datings, it's 99.999999% of our time here as a human species that was our inputs. It's only recently that we've changed that input from the sun and the grounding. And you look at the state of us, look at what that has done to us. We have so many incredible advances that, I think have brought a lot to humanity, but we have totally missed the basics of what the body needs. And so now we've got these incredible researchers that are going into the science of this is what the body needs. And when we peel it back, it's so incredibly basic. And, for the majority of us, it's free as well, which is, really empowering. And when I work with clients, and I'm sure we'll sort of go further into this, but when I work with clients, these are the things that I start with. And these are the things that come up when I'm muscle testing and going through the body as to what they need for particular stresses. These things always come up, and it's kind of blown my mind because it's so overlooked. So there's no negative impact from grounding. There's no negative impact from proper sunlight when done correctly. That, it's one of those things that we all need, as opposed to when we look at other medicines, we've got to be a bit more careful. As like if you're prescribing certain diet changes or supplements, and this is what I love about the NTA doing the functional clinical assessment, is that it is very bio-individual, as all healing should be, but the light and the grounding are just fundamental.
So for those of us who are living a busy modern, lifestyle, how can we start to practically incorporate more sunlight safely and grounding into our daily routines? And I know, from those who I speak with and clients, there is there can be at times this hesitation with regards to sunlight because of the, I guess dangers that have been discussed, and being sun smart, all that messaging that has been around for quite some time now, tens of years. So can you give us some practical ways that we can incorporate what you speak of on this daily basis?
Yeah, so I'll break it down into kind of three parts. So firstly, when we're looking at light, the biggest sort of takeaway is that the body doesn't do all the things all the time. So what I mean by that is that you're not detoxifying at 9 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning. You're not, well, ideally, you're not repairing cells and repairing broken mitochondria and replacing things and healing things and doing those sorts of things so much during the day. The same as, your digestive system starts to, not shut down, but it starts to slow down at night. We're not designed to be having a full digestive system going in the middle of the night because the body needs to do other things. The other thing is that we just think that we just produce hormones and we just produce neurotransmitters, and that there's all these different things floating around the body and we just produce that thing, but we forget that the body often takes one to make the next one, to take the next one, to take the next one. And so when we start to understand that the body has this order that needs to happen, it has to produce certain things at certain times of day to optimize health. So we know a lot of people, have heard of melatonin. A lot of people think it's, our sleep hormone. It is so much more than that. It blows my mind as to all the different things that it does within the body, one of them being our strongest anti-cancer hormone. But for us to have good melatonin, we have to release this kind of cellular melatonin in the morning, which happens when our eyes see UVA in the morning and a little bit of UVB. And then in the evening, in the absence of light, the pineal gland then releases the melatonin. So that has to happen. If that doesn't happen in adequate amounts, it disrupts sleep. But it also disrupts the way that the body is repairing. So if we're having cells splitting and multiplying, and you've got melatonin there overseeing that there's no mutations or any sort of changes or any issues happening within that, if we don't have enough of that, that's when we start to see these different mutations, and we may not, like mitophagy, so repairing of the mitochondria, and all these sorts of things that need to happen at a particular time of night. So the eye itself is designed, so for about almost 50% of the brain is influenced by light. About 25% of the brain is actually wired for light, as opposed to like 10% to food. So our brain and our eyes are designed to continually interact with light. We have the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the eye. It takes in the frequencies. So all of our light has different lengths of frequencies. Depending on the frequency that's coming into the eye, it says to the brain, now do this, or don't do this, or think about doing this, it's coming. Or so that sets up our 24-hour clock. It also, on a broader scale, the body starts to understand different seasonal changes in that as well, which is also important for storage of different things like vitamin D and all different sorts of things within the body. So the body has to have a system of doing things in a correct order. That order is specifically told to the body through light. And then from there, we start to see the body go, oh, okay, I know what I'm doing now, as opposed to, say, for example, so a lot of our lighting these days is very, very high in what we call artificial blue light. That was only about 2%, like a very small amount of the light that we would normally get. The majority of the light that we were getting was more from the sunlight and near infrared and red light. And now we've got that's very, very minimal because we're not spending time outside and we've, got all this artificial light happening and all sorts of reasons. So now we're in this state where the signals that we're getting are really confusing. So if you get up in the morning and you have a look at your phone, the blue light from your phone, and this is done by design to keep you using your phone, the blue light from your phone is akin to you being outside in the middle of summer, in the middle of the day. And so that signal is getting sent to the brain that it's not nighttime. Don't release those hormones. Don't start repairing. Don't start doing all the functions that we need to do at night. And instead, let's work on all the things that we're going to do in the middle of the day. So, and then we've got the problem of when we've got that stacking of things that needs to happen. So, especially things like your serotonin, your dopamine, melatonin, even down to your cortisol and leptin, these all interplay one with the other, which means that if you get up in the morning and you look straight at your screen, you've missed this opportunity for you to produce the particular hormones and things that the body needs, and it's jumped straight to what should be produced afterwards. But it can't produce those in adequate amounts because you didn't produce them early, you didn't produce almost like the precursors to it in the morning. So we end up in this situation where, as opposed to the body going, oh, it's morning, oh, I'm going outside, I'm looking at the light, I'm going to start increasing a little bit of cortisol and get moving and get hungry. And, I'm going to drop the melatonin right down now. And, all of these different things that the body needs to do. And then start, working with its insulin and kicking, starting up or firing up the digestive system. And we've got some beautiful studies between the amount of outside light you get and insulin as well, which is really interesting. Even just eating outside, having UV light on the body whilst eating, and insulin, all these things that the body's supposed to do. And then, the body's supposed to then see the sunset. And then, those colors are the cue for the body to go, oh, start relaxing, start releasing the nighttime hormones, do all these things. Instead, we're going around going, first thing in the morning, get up, it's the middle of the day, and then do this. And then we might put on some sunglasses. And then the body goes, wait, it's nighttime, shut everything down, start producing these things. And then we put sunscreen on. And then we go, oh, wait, there is no UV light. And then we go back inside and we put artificial lighting on and we go, wait, it's the middle of the day again, but I was sleepy, but now I'm not. Quick, start up digestive system, shut down detox. And it's just an absolute mess. And the sickest people that I have worked with, and these are the people that literally live in tents in the forest because they cannot cope with any environmental, any sort of modern living, basically. Those people, if I'm lucky enough to be back in contact with them afterwards, we always have a great conversation about what was it that pulled you out of that. And for the vast majority, once they've gotten to that point, it's almost always a nervous system reset. So, and one of the big interplays with the nervous system is knowing what time of day it is for the body. Because you can imagine if you were day after day after day, someone was screaming at you or messaging you going, get up, now go to bed, no, get up, no, do this, no, lay down, no, get up, no, do this, no. And you're like, I'm tired, I'm fatigued. And you're like, no, it's middle of the day. You can't have those things. You can't heal right now. It only, you can imagine how stressful that is for the body. And we're designed to know what time of day it is because throughout our evolution, if you didn't know what time of day it is and you didn't know when to hunt, when to crawl back in your cave, like when it was going to be dark, like I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Croods, but it's a fun little cartoon. And the dad's trying to explain to them, like, if you go outside the cave at this time, dead. If you do this, dead. It's quite funny, but it's kind of how it was because we were so reliant on knowing when to go outside, when not to go outside, when the seasonal changes were, when we needed to move. Like you didn't want to get caught outside in the ice unprepared. We really had to know what was going on. And the body loves that. It loves to have repetition. It loves to know what's happening next. It loves to know, okay, we see this with digestion. If you just wolf down your food, it's very different to you going, okay, now I'm going to smell it. Now I'm going to sit in my parasympathetic. For some people, now I'm going to do some things to increase my stomach acid or to help me digest this food better. The body likes to be prepared, and the circadian clock really helps that. So if we're not mimicking the light that we would naturally see outside, the body's in a state of confusion, the nervous system is out. And you only need to look at someone that hasn't slept for 3 nights. You're like, oh my God, you look horrendous. But we're kind of tinkering there, because a lot of people aren't getting that sleep because they're not preparing the body properly, which starts with sunrise. And then, they're sort of going around without getting adequate healing. They might sleep, but they're still waking up tired because the body isn't doing it to the level. It's not optimizing what it needs to do and the functions it needs to do at different times of the day. So that's where I bring it back to. And then when I'm working with a client, we go, okay, this is the easier bit, because I just want you to do what's happening outside. So when it comes to the kind of non-negotiable when I'm working with clients is that they do have to see sunrise. If they don't get sunset, I kind of allow it. However, that morning sunrise and how it changes, the timing changes throughout the season, is a critical input for the body to understand what's going on. Because we live in warm houses, we're not getting the seasonal fluctuations in terms of temperature. And the same goes with, when we're going out in the sun. For example, when we get UVA sun, which is at, the beginning of the sunrise, when you get that on the skin, that tells the body what the sun is going to be like for the day, what the UV is going to be like for the day. And the body is then able to produce adequate amount of sun protection in the skin. If you miss that, and then you go outside straight in the UV, you're probably going to burn. And so you'll notice that people who see morning sunrise will always have a beautiful color to the skin. And I have 2 redheads. So, I am very conscious about them getting morning sunlight because they have got a lighter skin. And so the more that they see the sunrise in the morning, the better prepared they are to be out in the sun without sunscreen, so that they also get the benefits of the UV on the skin and all the beautiful things that does. So we start with getting up and seeing sunrise. Now, that can be rugged up with a window open if you want it. We really don't want to be getting it through glass because it changes the light slightly, the same as reflection does. So we want to be getting it directly on the eyes, no contacts, no sunglasses. From there, everyone will be a little bit different as to the amount that they need. I have a very strong circadian rhythm because I work outside a lot. So for me, it takes a lot to shake out my circadian rhythm. For some people who've always been night owls, it will take a lot to get them back into balance a little bit. But we start with the morning. So we're not seeing any other light before the body gets those cues first thing in the morning. So that means no getting up, turning all the lights on, looking at your phone. And the good thing about this is when you start to get in a good light habit, you also notice that that's sort of helps to set the stage for really, so many other good lifestyle sort of routines. So for me at night, my phone goes on flight mode every night at actually about 7 p.m. I do have a landline, which is helpful if people need to call me, but that goes on. And then I don't look at my phone in the morning. I get up and I see that sunrise in the morning. That sets me up for the day. I know that that's working with my hormones. I know that that's working with my nervous system. I know that it's helping with my cortisol, leptin, I know that it's going to allow me to produce or release enough melatonin in the evening. And then I might spend time outside, sort of mid-morning, where we're getting more UVA and UVB come in. Everyone's lifestyle will be a little bit different. And for that, we sort of look at, what does your lifestyle look like? Is it okay for you to be outside lots? And, the more skin in the sun, the better. Or, if you're working in an office or what have you, how many light breaks can you take during that day so that you can go outside and you can keep going? Oh, a little reminder. Oh, yeah, that's what time of day it is. Oh, yeah, that's what season it is. And for some people, that will be enough. And then at night, which is the bit no one wants to work with, is when the sun goes down, we don't want any blue light. We have, we would have been around a fire, which is probably about 2% blue light, maybe even less. We definitely didn't have, like 80% blue light exposure, or phones, screens, overhead lighting, anything like that after dark. And that's probably, morning sunrise and that critical time are the two that really throw the body out. There's scope to do so much in between those two times, but it's that critical morning point and the evening that are going to be really hard. And so for clients, and most of my clients are quite unwell, we will work with, and also, you've got the family dynamics you've got to deal with as well. Not everyone wants to be on board with some things. And so we've got things like, I wear these. These are a fit over because I'm normally reading most nights. So those ones that go on. And then that cuts out all of the blue after night, like once the sun's gone down. And obviously that'll fluctuate summer to winter. So at the moment they go on at about 6 o'clock. I eat prior to the sun going down, and that'll fluctuate depending on the season. So while the digestive system's still nice and active, but I'm probably still up till about 8:30, 9 o'clock before I go to bed. So for that time from the sun going down, if I can see sunset, I will. If not, I pop my glasses on. Otherwise, that would be if I'm looking at a screen, or probably only if I'm looking at a screen, because otherwise we would use blue light blocking glasses, globes like these guys, block blue light. Their globes are fantastic. I can read beside that. It's a beautiful light. It doesn't affect my sleep at all. And then I don't do any above head lights. So once the sun gone down, if there is going to be light, it's below my eye level. So it seems like a lot. It seems like a lot of things to do, but in essence, you're just getting up to see the sunrise. You're going outside when you can during the day, and the more times, the better. And then you're either adjusting the house so you don't have that blue light coming in after night, or you're going to counteract it with some blue light blocking glasses. And that's kind of like the basic simple steps to it, which is really quite achievable. Like I've got 2 teenagers. My husband works on his computer quite late. So everyone, as soon as the sun goes down, everyone in our house is wearing blue light blocking glasses. And we sleep like logs, and we are all up at sunrise. And then, like I was saying, with the beautiful, once you start getting in that rhythm with the sun, you just wake up at that time, and it becomes so easy to do it, and the sleep becomes incredible. You know that anything that you're asking of the body, it's able to do, because it's set up beautifully to do that. We all have, we've all got cups like this. And in the morning, we all sit there, and the sun comes up, and we all have a drink, like a hot drink together. And that's like a really nice thing. And we would have done things like that. So it's incorporating these almost ritual type things that are around the sun. The grounding is super easy. It's just bare on the ground, and it doesn't have to be, people go, I need to go to the ocean, or I need to be on wet grass and it needs to be my feet. It can be any part of the body. The feet are more receptive, but it can be any part. And it doesn't have to be like, moist grass or anything like that, which is great. But even just paving, if it hasn't got a barrier underneath it, is grounded. Most concrete is grounded, just not in your house because it's got that waterproof barrier. Even just being outside, if you can't take your shoes off, like just, putting your hands on something that is grounded, whether that be a tree or, like a little outside brick wall or anything like that, will help ground and recharge the body. So for me, anytime you're going outside to get those little light breaks, that's when we want to have that sort of moment with the earth. And the more that we do that, the more that we start to get in connection with our environment, and the whole nervous system starts to reset from that.
Wow, so much goodness and helpful tips and I guess just ways in which we can incorporate more sunlight and grounding in the most simplest of ways. You've shared so much, Deanne. I was madly making notes, and I won't attempt to touch on everything you've just shared with us. It's such a wealth of information right there. So I'm not going to reiterate it in any way, shape, or form, but I'm sure the listeners and viewers of the vodcast are certainly going to be taking away some of these, and I guess we encourage to explore them and experiment with them, because if you're not sure how this might work for you, giving it a go
Yeah.
is the way to know as to how much it might help you, especially if you're not sleeping well, you're waking up still feeling tired, like you haven't slept, even if you have, and just also with other, elements that you may be navigating. One may be navigating in their everyday life, and seeing how these most simplest of activities may be able to support them in some way, shape, or form. Um, you know, the sunrise being such an important one that you've just shared with us, you've inspired me to get a park bench at the front of our house where the sun does rise. And I love that ritual that you shared with your family, to be able to do that first thing in the morning and, settle I guess, prime the nervous system, prime the body, that first sunlight. And that's the way in which the body then determines what that UV will be for the day. That's like mind-blowing. That's amazing. That's the innate intelligence in its most magical, wondrous form. And we don't really have to do much to initiate that. It's just these elements that we may have not necessarily engaged in, um, for various reasons, and the built environment is not necessarily conducive to that. But we can turn that around so quickly with these simple activities and rituals that we can engage in. Amazing. Thank you for all of that information. Um, if people are curious to learn more or want to work with you, where is the best place they'll be able to find you, Deanne, and get in touch?
Yeah, so they can work with me one-on-one. They do contact me through Building Biology WA. So they can use the email on the Building Biology WA website. My Instagram is under my name, Deanne Hislop. And we do have a Building Biology Facebook page. Any of those platforms are fine. And then it depends on which way they want to engage in. So we do the services for assessing the indoor environment for molds and chemicals and things like that. In terms of the quantum biology, and also which we didn't really go into, but the different stressor testing methods that we do as well, that again can be one-on-one. But there is, what I would encourage is that there is an absolute wealth of information out there. And, you know, it blows my mind how much we've missed it, because I go, you know, I've spent the last decade going into people's homes, and majority of the time we get called in where it's like Lyme's and Lyme disease and biotoxin illness or SIRS, and they've gone down these, you know, they've gone on these enormous journeys, and they've ended up at the most complicated and complex of outcomes. And when we go back in there and I assess how they're living and all of the rest of it, that there's no gatekeeper anymore. So no one is looking at what was missed. So, you know, this doctor that's running, you know, thousands of dollars of tests and going, oh my God, I found mold. Get your home tested, and it's definitely got to be that because it's very disruptive. Like, no one is going, well, do you sleep? Is your body in a rhythm? You know, are you going outside getting sunlight? Are you grounding? Are you in a good relationship? Have you sorted through some of your trauma? Like, those things are just completely missed. And to be honest, I don't think people need a practitioner to do that. I think they need to just look at their lifestyle and go, okay, the very basics that I need as a human being, have I achieved those? And if not, I shouldn't really progress to the next stage of investigation, because it's a little bit like if you had, you know, before we became so scared of things like fevers and things like that, you know, if someone had a headache, for example, mum would sort of say, like, have you been to the toilet? Have you drunk water? What time did you go to bed last night? What's upsetting you? Are you okay? You know, have you got tension somewhere? We would do those things. And then, you know, if none of those things came up, then that person would go to the doctors. We're not doing that anymore at all. And in particular with chronic health. And really what we should be doing, and the checklist that I tend to do with clients, but they can very much do this themselves, is to go, firstly, do I have good light hygiene? And there are people like Kerry B, Sarah Kleiner, some of Jack Cruise's work is very technical, but anyone in that field, they can very easily, and we'll attach for this Zoom, just how people can actually do that, because they don't need a practitioner to help them unless they're having issues with it. You know, am I drinking clean water? Am I grounding? Like, those sort of basic things, I sort of encourage people to really sort of take a bit of ownership of that themselves, because it should make sense to them that if the very basics of our human needs, and that includes, you know, the electropollution as well, which is a bit more harder to address, which we can definitely help with. But, you know, are the very basics being met? Because it's not going to be this complex answer that's the reason those things are out. It's going to be those things being out is what's causing everything else. And so we really do encourage people to take a little step back, the same as, you know, the approach that NTA does with the foundations, and look at what's going on. Start with light, go to grounding, start to look into the water that they're having, and then start to go from there. Because, you know, if you're trying to detox from something, but you don't even turn detox on at night because your light system's out and your body clock's out, going to another practitioner and thinking that's going to help you probably isn't the answer. Whereas, you know, starting to relearn and go back and go, okay, well, how did we live? How can I then create this for my family and loved ones, or even just for yourself? That's what I sort of encourage people to do. So on our socials, we have a lot of snippets on how people can do that. But there is an absolute wealth of information out there that is free, that people can look at. They're not going to need to go buy expensive things other than maybe a good pair of blue light blocking glasses. Yeah. So by all means, contact me. But I would love you to go on this journey. And know that you definitely can do it yourself as well.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that. And, one's own health and wellness journey will essentially, one is in the driver's seat and should be taking that driver's seat and not necessarily allowing it to be, driven by someone else, including a health practitioner, be it mainstream medicine practitioner or a holistic practitioner. Yeah, I love how you spoke about these. Well, they are the foundations. They are on our doorstep, literally stepping out of out that door, and you've got medicine right there at your feet, literally with grounding, and just above with light, and you're so right, because we can go down these rabbit holes, or even like on a merry-go-round as well with health. And clients can experience this, where they are doing all these more maybe, dare I say, sexy wellness activities, like detoxing with this, and again, nothing wrong with that, but eventually, if there is some benefit, which it's not to say that there wouldn't be, maybe the most likely that will become undone over time, and then you're on this merry-go-round, like, oh, I was feeling better, but now I'm like regressing again. And because of those foundational components are not being considered. So some great recommendations there from you, Deanne, in terms of, what our listeners and viewers can do if they're in this sort of state of not, a state of dis-ease and not feeling as well as they'd like to. Well, how about, look at some of these foundational components like light and grounding and nature, and the blue light that can infiltrate, one's life, and therefore, purchasing or minimal equipment, so to speak, or items that can be supportive, like the blue blocking glasses, which I absolutely love as well, and the blue block lighting. We've got it all throughout our home. These small steps. You don't have to do it all at once. I know for myself and my family, it's small steps. The next one is the glasses for the children as well. So I love how you spoke about your children and how they're engaging, and we're still doing certain activities after certain periods of time in the day. That's okay. We can grab a particular tool and utilize it, so we can keep doing certain things if we need to. And then activities that are not necessarily necessary, maybe we can dial those down and again experiment and see how we're feeling thereafter. Awesome.
It's I had a young or a teenage girl come in the other day, and I love working with teenagers because their blue light exposure is just next level. That it came in, and she'd spent 3 years trying to sort out her hormones, and she had a lot of gut issues and a lot of things going on. And she came in and she said, and we did some testing, and we were testing the inputs that are throwing out her hormones. And the first one was her light hygiene. And she was going, oh, I don't know how this, like, she was like, I don't get this. Are we sure, can we test again? But she actually rides horses, and I actually know her quite well. And I know that she puts her horses under light for an extra hour in winter so that they don't grow a coat. And then they also use like a little blue light near the eye to change their fertility level. And I'm going, you're kind of doing it for your horse. And it's just that once we start to connect, the same as putting a plant inside in complete darkness, once it starts to make sense to people that, we need those things. And that's the most important thing, is that it makes sense to people, that then I feel like, the changes kind of happen very quickly and easily.
Oh, fascinating story there. And those changes happen so naturally, right? When you're supporting the body in that way, and understanding how it does all connect. And wow, that's super interesting that that story that you shared with the teenager that you're working with, and how those inputs were being changed you know,
like eggs
in
and chickens, like lights on twice a day, like increase the egg cycle. But we're going through all these hormonal issues and we're not connecting the dots.
You're so right. Thank you for connecting those dots, you know, in a different type of a situation for our listeners and viewers. And I'm sitting here nodding my head like, yeah, that makes complete sense. Yeah, and you know, taking that, I guess, that stock take of where someone's at. What are you exposing yourself to? You know, after listening to this interview, well, okay, what are you exposing yourself to? What are you engaging in? That may be therefore putting your system as a whole out of whack. When you spoke about, you know, how doing these, engaging in these activities in different ways, how the body just becomes so confused, right?
Yeah.
And it modulates. And like you said, the chicken eggs, you know, under the lights twice a day, then you've got the you know, the little chicks that hatch, and you know, that's all through modulation of light. And so if we can bring that back to ourselves as well, as what are we engaging in, how is it changing and modulating these bodily processes, and therefore may very well be influencing the way that we are feeling within our bodies. Yeah, such a fascinating topic. We could talk at length, and I know with your expertise, Deanne, there are so many paths that we could take this interview today. We've decided to remain grounded, you know, with light, nature, and grounding, because they are very much the basics, and I really appreciate that we've done that. But with your expertise, we could definitely go in other ways, and maybe we will in the future. And certainly for those who this interview has sparked their interest, go ahead and follow Deanne and see what she is sharing, or you know, get in contact if you'd like to work with her. So to wrap up this interview today, what's currently lighting you up and inspiring your work, Deanne? Are there any exciting projects or ideas you're exploring and you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers?
I definitely, what is lighting me up is the more testing that I am doing with clients in terms. So that's something that I've been developing over a couple of years. That is kind of I guess it's lit up my spark of like just absolute wonder at how intelligent the human body is, like, and how it always knows what it needs, and we try and pretend that we know more. So that, delving into that side and seeing these chronic health issues, and then testing with clients and going, oh my God, you know, like, you needed a bush flower remedy, which, you know, like, to, you know, unless you actually test it on the body, it wouldn't be a go, you know, like, it wouldn't be my first go-to. And you know, starting to see that the body needs these most basic things has been, as like, is really is just filling me full of just happiness and joy, because they're such achievable and attainable things for people. And so I'm absolutely loving that process. I have teamed up with another beautiful soul, and we will be releasing some snippets around those information from everything from the rituals that we do, what I do in my house with my kids, and to things that she does. And she's also studied quantum biology. So we're very much just loving getting into the lifestyle around what we do and sharing that, and removing just all this noise and fear and, you know, complexity around how we should be living. And that's just opened up a completely different dynamics and space for me. So I think at the moment I'm overwhelmed with love for, or admiration, I guess it is, for the human body, the way that it's able to speak from the subconscious, and what it actually wants, because they're things that are very easy to give. So it's just this beautiful kind of space that I've fallen into at the moment that, yeah, is definitely definitely making life a lot of fun right now. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. And so we'll watch this space.
Watch this
Um,
space.
watch this space, and the shares that sound like they're coming, I think is great, because again, it's like this, the sharing of information, knowledge, wisdom, and experience, and that can be very inspiring, not just through the spoken word, but then actually, like you did before, you just popped up you showed your glasses, these and these little shares from a practical perspective, and showing, I guess, what you and your colleague are engaging in. Very inspiring. So I'm sure a number of our listeners and viewers will, jump into your space, into your realm, and certainly take away with them so many great hints and information that they can pretty much engage in straight away, right?
Yeah.
Because they're of that focus of the simplicity of those foundational inputs, and also you are so right when you spoke of the allowing, or connecting with the body and allowing it to guide what it is needing, because I guess we've been conditioned in a way within our society that we know best, and so, and from that very logical perspective, we can be very helpful, but if the body is not ready for a given element in terms of healing, well, likely it'll go nowhere, and if anything, it can potentially be detrimental. So having that communication with the body that you do, and you're a trained FNTP, so that's what we do as FNTPs, that we really, that lights us up, right?
Yeah.
Being able to go, okay, well, I think this might be supportive. Well, let's actually test it on the body through muscle testing, through that connection of that connection with the body, rather than just blindly apply it and say, well, normally this is supportive, so let's go with that. But rather take a step back, test it, and then it's a yes or it's a no, and we move forward accordingly. So very super. Well, thank you so much once again, Deanne. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the NTA Australia New Zealand podcast. I could absolutely speak to you for hours, but we're not going to do that. I think we're at about the hour mark, so we'll stop it right here. But thank you once again.
My pleasure. Absolute pleasure.